Here's going to be a relatively short update on the passive solar round pole greenhouse. And so stick with me, I'll spend a few minutes just sharing what's new, how it's evolving, and some of the design elements that I'm working through and challenges and all that kind of stuff. It's really evolving. It's got a ways to go, and it feels like the closer I get to wrapping up the structure, the more complex the remaining design challenges are. But overall, you can hear the sound is quite different. We're starting to really be enclosed in here. So I finished up the roofing, finished with the Tough-Tex polycarbonate material for the most part. There's last little details. There's some really complex corners and nooks and crannies. I have to do some custom cutting and adjustments and all that. And one big significant element, and I think I'll save the details of this for another video, will be how to address some of the more significant gaps like along the top, which at this point I now am going to describe as an intentional design element. That's a gap that runs to the outside, and what I think we'll do is put hardware cloth over it on the outside and then pack it with custom wool pillows that Sasha will make, so it'll be really snug and insulated for the winter and then open to the summer. And of course there's some pretty significant light gaps. That's the fun of going from natural round timbers to rectilinear manufactured goods. And so I'll have to go through and put in wood, and then we'll use cob. We'll make small batches of decent quality cob with a fair amount of wool and hair in it. I'll talk about that in another video, instead of using great stuff or any of that kind of junk. And that'll be how we work those seams up. So I'm not too concerned about those. I know that they're part of the deal. And I've gone through, I'm starting to reinforce more thoroughly the corner elements. Got some great feedback. Canadian Permaculture Legacy was explaining into some detail that it took me a little while to understand about the dynamics of bracing, knee bracing, and supporting. So I'm trying to take that to heart and add in a little bit more structural strength. But overall, it's coming together to be a pretty stout little structure here. Let me zoom out again and take a shot from another angle. Here I am on the outside looking at the western wall, and of course that corner needs to be finished, which I will do. And then, as I mentioned in the last video, this whole section needs to be addressed, and that will be hardware cloth and then polycarbonate Tough-Tex over it for the winter that can come off for the spring and summer. And as I mentioned in the last video, the design there is, number one, keeping the structure decoupled physically from the home, just from a licensing and insurance standpoint, but then also being able to have this really intense access for air to move in the summer. So hopefully that'll be a good design. We'll see. We'll have to make adjustments if need be. So this western wall, I've got two windows that are framed in and supported. I should mention here, it's a little rough looking, but the concept is I installed permanent strong base run of dimensional black locust that has timber lock screws and a bunch of support screws in the corners. That's all the way around the structure now. And I went ahead and hammered in with a maul some really long, so I mean these were like 4-foot tall stakes that I hammered in, and then cut off the excess and screwed those into those. So there's really intense support from racking and flex down low. This bottom rail is incredibly sturdy. And then with the windows, rather than screwing them directly into this, what I've done is rested them against that frame at the bottom and the top, and then I've taken chunks of dimensional locust and pinched them in on either side where the screws go into the locust, the bottom rail and the little staves at the bottom here, but they don't go through the glass. Well, of course, not through the glass, but not through the wooden frame around the glass either. The idea being there's a little bit of latitude for these to shift if they need to, if there's some sort of dynamic force with crazy snow load or wind, because the glass has absolutely no flexibility. In fact, if I show you from the front here, bear with me as I walk, what will look like a glaringly bad layout is somewhat intentional. There's a tiny bit of a gap here well, depending on your eye, a significant gap. But what I'll be doing is I ran through a low-cost planer that I have, these locust boards that are from offcuts from a local mill. So they look kind of nice and they're smooth, and then run them through a table saw. So I've got these thin strips, and what I'll do is screw them in at the top and at the bottom. And you can see again, there are those pinchers that hold it in at the bottom. I'll do that at the top. And so now they'll be held in position very snug. Here's one that's done. I think it looks nice enough. It certainly is functional. And again, it gives the windows a little bit of wiggle room to do what they need to do. Some custom cuts to match the round. Definitely a challenge to design and work with round elements. This western side has 2 static windows, and then these articulate. We got these for $15 used. So this will add tons of ventilation in the winter. And then this is open with the idea that I will mount hardware mesh over this and then make a half circle compost ring and fill this entirely with compost, insulate it with hay bales so that the heat from the compost can go into the greenhouse. That should be a nice element there. The south side worked out beautifully with the 5 sliding glass door panels that I salvaged from the home that was getting demolished. 2 days later, a machine went in and in 3 hours ate the home and put it in a dump. It's amazing. But there's a little bit of a gap here. Designed it in. I tried to be intentional with it. I will frame this out with locust on the sides. It'll have a base layer of hardware cloth and Tough Tex roofing sealing it in for the winter, and then come spring, summer, we can take off that and allow for another slit for extreme air ventilation. And maybe it's 2 sections of panel that go to here and then go in here, and we can take the top one out for the swing season or have a wax piston articulate that for air and ventilation. But that'll be a really good active ventilation element. It's been a fun challenge trying to design concurrently the needs of how to really button up this structure so it holds a tremendous amount of warmth through the winter, but not box ourselves out from having the ventilation we need for the summer. But anyway, so that's the west wall, south wall, pretty far along the east wall, which is where we'll have our access, framed in this simple used door for $10. It has some more work to be done. Need to do some gasketing around it, and then there'll be 2 more double pane, maybe 3 more double pane windows just like the west side that'll go in here, and a section of Tough Tex to span that section, and we'll be in the home stretch of getting it buttoned up. But that's where it is right now. Lots and lots of time on this project so far, but it's been really pleasurable, really challenging, and with weather like this, the nursery is really distinctly on pause, so it's kind of nice to be focusing on this. I would guess now we're getting into the realm of $500 to maybe $600 in total when it'll be all said and done. When I wrap it all up, I'll tally it all and share notes honestly about what it cost, but I'd be surprised if it was any much over $600. It's funny, the first video I said, oh, be surprised if it's over $400, then $500, $600, but I think that's about where it'll be. Love some more feedback and input from folks. Share what you're thinking, and we'll do another update when the whole wrap is done and we start evolving the interior, which is going to be what I'm very excited to do. Permanent raised beds with climate battery and ground to air heat transfer and all sorts of fun experiments. Thanks for watching.